The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the hospital room as I held my mother's frail hand. Her breathing was shallow, each intake of air seeming more difficult than the last. In these final moments, I wanted to remember everything about her: the gentle wrinkles around her eyes, the calluses on her hands from years of working our family farm, the faint lavender scent she always wore. "It's time to let go, Mom," I whispered, brushing back her silver hair. "The farm will be okay, I promise." I felt David's hand on my shoulder, his grip uncomfortably tight. My husband of 8 years, standing behind me like a dark shadow as my world crumbled. The heart monitor's rhythm began to slow. That's when he leaned down, his lips brushing against my ear. "Once she's gone, the farmland is mine. Object, and you'll never see Emma and Lucas again." My blood ran cold, but I didn't turn around. I kept my eyes fixed on Mom's face, watching as her last breath escaped her lips. The monitor flatlined, its harsh tone cutting through the room like a knife. I'm Olivia Harrison, and at 34, I was about to learn just how cruel the man I married could be. The next few days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements and paperwork. Our small farming community in Cedar Grove rallied around us, bringing casseroles and offering condolences. But beneath their sympathy, I could sense their uncertainty. Everyone knew the Harrison family farm was one of the most valuable properties in the county. 500 acres of prime agricultural land that had been in my family for 4 generations. David played his part perfectly. The grieving son-in-law, supportive husband, devoted father. He held my hand at the funeral, wiped away my tears, and made sure our children, Emma, 7, and Lucas, 5, were always perfectly behaved. But I caught the calculating looks he gave the farmland when he thought no one was watching. "The kids are finally asleep," David said, walking into our kitchen that evening. He loosened his tie and poured himself a whiskey. "We need to talk about the farm." I stood at the sink, staring out the window at the fields bathed in moonlight. The old scarecrow in the north field, the one Mom had insisted on keeping despite its weathered appearance, stood sentinel in the darkness. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "The farm stays in my name just like Mom wanted." David's laugh was cold. "Come on, Olivia, be reasonable. You know nothing about running a farm. I have connections, investors interested in development. We could make millions by destroying everything my family built." I turned to face him, seeing the stranger who had replaced my husband. "This isn't just land, David. It's our heritage, our children's inheritance." His expression hardened. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. Either you sign the property over to me, or I'll make sure you never see Emma and Lucas again. My family has enough influence to make that happen." "You're threatening to take my children." The words felt like acid in my mouth. "I'm giving you a choice." He finished his whiskey and set the glass down with deliberate care. "Be smart about this, Olivia. You have until the end of the week to decide." As he walked away, I gripped the counter to steady myself. How had I not seen this coming? The signs had been there: his increasing interest in the farm's finances, the mysterious phone calls, the subtle comments about my mother's mental state in her final months. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I found myself walking through the moonlit fields, my bare feet cold against the dewy grass. The old scarecrow loomed ahead, its faded overalls and hat silhouetted against the stars. Mom had always said it was special, that it watched over the farm's secrets. I thought it was just one of her whimsical stories. Standing before it now, I noticed something odd. The left pocket of its overalls was bulging slightly, the fabric weathered but intact. Reaching inside, my fingers touched something smooth and cold. A key, old and brass, with a familiar pearl charm attached. My heart raced as I recognized it. Mom's special key, the one she always worn around her neck, but had mysteriously lost 2 months before her death. She'd been so insistent of the scarecrow, about its importance. Had she known? Had she seen this coming somehow? Clutching the key, I hurried back to the house and up to Mom's study. The room was exactly as she'd left it, her collection of antique lockboxes still arranged on the shelves. The pearl charm matched one of them perfectly, a small iron box I'd never seen opened. Inside, I found a stack of documents, photos, and a letter addressed to me in Mom's flowing handwriting. As I read, tears filled my eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness. Mom hadn't just left me a farm. She left me a way to fight back. "My darling Olivia," The letter began, "If you're reading this, then my suspicions about David were correct. The scarecrow has kept our family's secrets safe for generations, and now it's protected our most important documents. Remember what I always told you. The land knows its true guardians." I stayed up all night reading, my hands trembling with each new revelation. By dawn, I knew exactly what I had to do. David might think he held all the cards, but Mom had seen him coming. She prepared for this, armed me with everything I needed. Looking out the window at the old scarecrow, I allowed myself a small smile. David had no idea what he'd started, or how it would end. The sun rose over Cedar Grove, painting the fields gold. It was time to show my husband exactly who he was dealing with. Mom had taught me well, and the farm had one more secret to share. The next morning, I moved through our daily routine with calculated precision. I packed Emma and Lucas's lunches, kissed them goodbye as they boarded the school bus, and waited until David left for his law firm in the city. Only then did I allow myself to return to Mom's study and the documents that had changed everything. Among the papers was a thick folder labeled Harrison Development LLC, a company David had secretly formed 6 months ago. There were emails, contracts, and most damning of all, recordings. Mom hadn't just suspected David's plans, she documented them. Mrs. Harrison was quite thorough. Mr. Peterson, our family's longtime attorney, said later that morning as he reviewed the evidence. "These recordings of David discussing plans to force you out, while they're quite incriminating." I sat across from his desk, clutching my coffee cup. "He threatened to take my children." Mr. Peterson's eyes hardened. "That's where he made his biggest mistake. Your mother didn't just leave you the farm, Olivia. She left you proof of David's conspiracy to commit fraud. He's been planning this takeover for years, working with developers behind my back while my mother was dying." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "Using our children as leverage." "There's more." Mr. Peterson pulled out another document. "Your mother suspected David might try something like this. That's why she set up a trust for Emma and Lucas, with you as sole trustee. He can't touch it." The weight that had been crushing my chest lifted slightly. Mom had protected not just the land, but my children's future too. "What do we do next?" I asked. "First, we file for an emergency custody order. These threats he made are serious. Then, we move to protect the farm's assets. The development contracts he's been arranging, they're worthless without your signature." As we planned our next steps, my phone buzzed with a text from David. "Thought about what I said. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I didn't respond. Instead, I drove out to the north field, where the old scarecrow stood watch. The morning sun cast its shadow long across the earth, pointing toward the ancient oak tree at the field's edge. Mom's letter had mentioned the tree, and now I understood why. Kneeling at its base, I found what she'd described, a small metal box, buried shallow among the roots. Inside was a USB drive and another letter, this one dated just weeks before her death. "My dearest Olivia," it read, "if you're reading this, then David has shown his true colors." The drive contains security footage from my hospital room, footage he doesn't know exists. Remember when he insisted on private time with me? Now you'll know what really happened during those visits. That evening, after picking up the kids from school, I took them to my best friend Sarah's house. "Just a fun sleepover," I told them, hugging them extra tight. David was waiting when I got home, nursing his usual whiskey. "Where are the kids?" he demanded. "Safe," I replied, my voice steady. "Away from you." His face darkened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know everything, David. The development company, the threats to Mom when she refused to sell, the plans you made while she was dying." He set his glass down slowly. "You're being dramatic. I'm trying to secure our future." "No," I said, pulling out my phone. "You're trying to steal my children's inheritance." Mom recorded everything. Your meetings with developers, your threats, even your private conversations in her hospital room. The color draining from his face. "You're bluffing." I played one of the recordings, his voice filling the kitchen as he threatened my dying mother, demanding she change her will. His hands began to shake. "The thing about old farms," I said, stopping the playback, "is that they hold onto their secrets. Mom knew what you were planning. She left evidence everywhere, in the scarecrow, under the oak tree, even in her hospital room. Did you really think she'd leave her family legacy unprotected?" He lunged for my phone, but I was ready. "Touch me, and the recordings go straight to the police. Touch our children, and every developer in the state will know how you operate." You can't prove anything, he snarled, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. The emergency custody hearing is tomorrow morning, I informed him. Pack a bag, you won't be staying here tonight. This isn't over, he threatened, heading for the stairs. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I watched him pack, my hand tight around the phone. Actually, David, I do. That's why I'm not afraid anymore. After he left, I walked out to the scarecrow again. The moon was rising, casting long shadows across the fields my ancestors had tended for generations. Mom's voice seemed to whisper on the evening breeze. The land knows its true guardians. Standing there, I felt stronger than I had in years. David thought he was fighting me for a piece of property, but he'd never understood what the farm really meant. It wasn't just land. It was legacy, memory, and now justice. Tomorrow would bring the custody hearing, and with it, the beginning of David's downfall. But tonight, under the stars my mother had taught me to name, I was exactly where I belonged. The old scarecrow kept its vigil, guardian of one last secret that would seal David's fate. Mom's final gift was still waiting to be revealed, and when it was, my husband would learn what happened to those who threatened a Harrison woman's children. The wind picked up, rustling through the cornfields like whispered promises. Dawn wasn't far away, and with it would come the fight of my life. But standing there, surrounded by the land that had sustained my family for generations, I knew I wouldn't be fighting alone. The courthouse steps were bathed in morning sunlight as I walked up them, clutching a worn leather briefcase that held Mom's final surprise. David stood with his lawyer near the entrance, his confident smirk faltering when he saw me approach. Inside the courtroom, Judge Thompson, a stern woman who'd known my family for years, listened intently as David's lawyer painted me as an unstable widow, too grief-stricken to care for my children properly. Furthermore, Your Honor, he continued, Mrs. Harrison's emotional attachment to an outdated family farm demonstrates her inability to make sound decisions for Emma and Lucas's future. When it was my turn, I opened Mom's briefcase. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that my husband has engaged in a pattern of threatening behavior and attempted fraud. The recordings played through the courtroom speakers. David's voice, cold and calculating as he threatened my dying mother. His conversations with developers, planning to strip the land bare. His phone calls discussing how to use my children as leverage. David's face grew paler with each revelation. But I wasn't finished. And finally, I said, pulling out the last document, I present my mother's final amendment to the farm's trust, signed and notarized 2 days before her death. Judge Thompson read it carefully, her eyebrows rising. This stipulates that any attempt to coerce the sale of the farm or use the minor children as leverage automatically triggers a clause transferring all parental rights solely to Mrs. Harrison. David jumped to his feet. That's impossible. She couldn't have known. Sit down, Mr. Harrison, Judge Thompson ordered. She turned to me. Did your mother explain why she added this amendment? I nodded. She saw what was coming. The scarecrow in our north field, it wasn't just watching over the land. It was recording everything. Every meeting David had with developers in that field, every threat he made while walking the property. Mom had installed surveillance equipment inside it months ago. The courtroom erupted in whispers. David slumped in his chair, defeated. Judge Thompson's ruling was swift and absolute. Full custody of Emma and Lucas was granted to me. David was barred from the property and ordered to pay significant damages for his attempted fraud. As we left the courthouse, David caught up to me. You've ruined everything, he hissed. No, I replied calmly. You did that yourself. The farm doesn't just grow crops, David. It grows truth, and truth has deep roots. That evening, I stood with Emma and Lucas in the north field. The old scarecrow washed over us as the kids played, their laughter carrying across the land that would one day be theirs. Mommy, Emma asked, will we always live here? I pulled her close. As long as we want to, sweetheart. This land is our heritage, our home, and no one can take that from us. Later, as the sun set, I found one last letter from Mom in a scarecrow's pocket. My dearest Olivia, it read, now you understand why I always said the land knows its true guardians. You've protected our legacy, just as I knew you would. The farm is more than earth and crops. It's the story of strong women who refuse to be bullied or broken. Your children will grow up knowing that strength, just as you did. I'm so proud of you, my brave daughter. 5 years have passed since that day in court. The farm thrives under my care, It's organic produce feeding our community just as it has for generations. Emma and Lucas are growing tall and strong, learning the rhythms of the land as I did at their age. David moved away, his reputation in ruins after the truth about his schemes became public. Sometimes I hear he's trying to rebuild his law practice in another state, but his past follows him like shadows across a field. The old scarecrow still stands guard in the north field, though its surveillance equipment has long since been removed. I keep it there as a reminder that sometimes the best defense is simply watching, waiting, and trusting that truth will find its way to the surface, like seeds breaking through soil in spring. Mom was right about everything. The land does know its true guardians. And as I watch my children play in the same fields where I grew up, I know our family's legacy is secure. Not because we fought to keep it, but because we understood what David never did, that some things are worth more than money, and the strongest roots are the ones nourished by love. The sun sets over Cedar Grove each evening, painting our fields gold, and I think about how wrong David was. He thought he was fighting for land, for property. But this place, this legacy, was never just about the soil. It was about the strength of women who refused to be bullied, the power of mothers protecting their children, and the simple truth that some bonds can't be broken by threats or greed. The old scarecrow keeps its vigil, and our family farm continues to thrive, proof that the most precious inheritances aren't just passed down. They're earned, protected, and cherished generation after generation.